Welcome to the Book Asylum. Happy Saturday, everybody. Today's guest is Sheldon Higdon. He is the author of the book The Erie Brothers and the Witches of Autumn. I believe that's the title.
Yep,
Okay.
that sounds right to me.
I forget things quite often. With
Well,
us today, we
so
have
do I.
Doc Fried. What's that?
So do I. So for all I know, it could have been a different title. So
I have spit out the wrong titles before, and it's very embarrassing because the guest is just like, what?
Yeah.
Anyway, uh, Sheldon, let's just open this up with the Erie Brothers. Take us through how you decided to make these characters and the first story that we're going to see them in.
it really came from various things. I have the book is about twin boys, and I have twins. So when they were born, and I mean, this book was from idea to publish date. It was 10 years.
Wow.
And life happened in there along the way. I had, several back surgeries, and then I had another child who's a few years older than them. So, life happened, and just the writing became slower. But it came out because of the twins, at that point, and their sister. And so I wanted to know what kind of ventures they would be on. Looking at them, going, okay, they're 1 year, 2 years old. So what's gonna come of them in the future? And so I sort of said, okay, well, let me write a story about these twins. And then I already had the Erie Brothers in mind. I knew that name was there. It was already there. And so I said, okay, so I'm going to do a horror version of the Hardy Boys. And that was my intentions. Whether it came out that way, I can't tell you, because it just, that was my initial reaction. It was, okay, I'm going to do the Hardy Boys. It's going to be a horror version. And then it sort of blossomed and progressed from there and became what it is now.
How did you choose the Erie Brothers? Is that the children's names, like the last name of the family?
Last name their last name is Eerie, as in spooky Erie, not Lake Erie. A friend of mine and I were talking one day and about movies or something, and I kept going, like at that time there was a lot of movies coming out from directors who were brothers who were directing horror films. There was quite a few different. And I said, man, imagine if me and you were directing movies. We could be like, and I said the Erie Brothers. And I went, huh, that's kind of cool. And I kind of, put it in the back of my head and kept it. And then when the book idea came around, then I said, oh, since they're twin boys, the Erie Brothers.
It's a great name. That alone in the title will catch your interest. Yeah. So what age would those guys be? Are they like preteen,
12,
teen?
12.
They're 12?
Yeah, in the book they're 12.
Okay, so here's the hard.
So the book is from 8 all the way up to 112. I mean, so far a lot of adults are reading the book, really, and I'm getting a lot of feedback from them. Reviews and emails and stuff like that. So, and then they give it to their kids to read, or they're reading it with their kids, or things like that. So
right.
So yeah.
So 12-year-old twin boys. That alone is a whole set of adventures just from the age.
It's frightening.
But it's frightening. We're talking forks and light sockets. That's the age where you do stupid shit. So what kind of trouble can they get into? How do they come across these witches, I guess? And maybe that's a spoiler.
Well, it's not really a secret, but they are the witches.
No shit.
So, yeah.
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, they discovered certain abilities in them, and then they're told by their aunt, who is sort of watching them, that, okay, well, since these things are happening to you, here's why, and then they discover that they're witches.
Okay.
And it comes up with the whole warlock thing, because I've had a few people ask me, well, how come they're not warlocks? And I'm like, if any time in your history when you went to school and you learned about, when did the word warlock ever come up?
Rarely.
Yeah, it's not really a thing like people make it out to be. It's male can be witches too. It's just that became a later thing.
It's like assigning a gender name, I guess.
Yeah, and that's one reason why I didn't want to do it too, because for me, there shouldn't be any assigned gender to any of it. Just you're right across the board. It's just for me, it was witches, And since I'm running a fiction, I figured I would just keep witches.
Okay.
Okay. Well, plus they're only 12. I mean, they are still kids. You can just call them witches,
Because they mention it in the book. One of them says, I've heard the word war, and then the aunt sort of explains a little bit to him, stuff like that. So it's mentioned in the book why they're not called warlocks.
Okay.
So
the hijinks these two get into, is this coming from your past or your children or a mixture?
It would
How
be
old are they twins?
What's that?
right when I started writing this, they were like 1 year old at the time.
Okay.
Now they're
So
11.
it's not them.
Now they're 11.
Yeah.
So now they're providing fodder for the second book because
future.
now they're
Yeah.
into all the trouble. Wonderful.
Yeah, and then but yeah, no, there's a everything I write, there's always me in it, whether I want to or not. For instance, in this one, they live on an island out in the way out in the Atlantic, and they ride their bikes everywhere. And me as a kid, I rode my bike everywhere, BMX bike, looking for things to jump, looking for whatever,
Yeah.
And so they ride their bikes, through the woods and all that stuff. So there's a lot of me in it as well. It's just I can't. There's so many. For me, I grew up an only child basically, and I was a latchkey kid. So there's a lot of that in here too. Their best friend is the latchkey kid.
Okay.
And so there is a lot of me in it, and there's like their aunt's name is named after my mom. There's a principal who's named after my mom's maiden name. There's so many references to other people within my own family in the book. So, and even other characters in the book have the names of my actual kids. So I use their real names for other characters in the book too, as well.
Okay.
Were both your parents alive when you were a latchkey?
Just my dad, I didn't know. My mom, it was me and my mom. So
Okay,
my dad was, who knows where he was.
Aren't the Erie Brothers, hasn't their mom passed, or does?
Yeah, they passed, and so their aunt is the one who comes and sort of becomes their their guardian, if you will.
Okay.
And so then that's part of the whole story, and what leads them on their journey is asking their mom, and and it deals with grief and the loss and how to overcome something like that, and how to rely on each other, and how family is stronger than any spell that they could ever know. And then there's they have their friends and stuff, so that's what the book's truly about.
Okay. Well, it explains how you understand latchkey kids.
Oh yeah,
because your mom would be out working, and
yeah, or a lot of times she was gone after work, and I wouldn't see her until the next. So I she would just go, okay, there's French toast pizza, and put that in the microwave or whatever, or here's a whole bunch of VHS movies. So I'd watch horror films at 10 and 9 years old, and they had kung fu movies in the 70s.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, she liked horror, so that's where my a lot of that came from, was my mom. So
she left it around for you, and you never had disturbing dreams, or are your books your disturbing dreams?
No, I tend to think that Stephen King was once asked, "Why do you write horror?" And he goes, "Why do you think I had a choice?"
Oh,
okay. Why do you think I have a choice in the matter? But for me, and I didn't realize this until a few months back, actually, that when I was born, I was pronounced dead 3 times, and I had a hole in my heart, collapsed lung. I weighed just under 3 pounds.
Wow.
And so anymore, I consider the reason why I write horror is because it was something I was born with. I was sort of born out of that darkness.
Yeah,
and
sounds
so it's instilled in me from birth, basically. And so I think that's why I have a natural tendency that's the way I went, was that, that genre and subgenres and whatnot.
Wow.
When I grew up, my mom liked horror too, but you got to understand, horror back when I was a child was different. We're talking Night Gallery was the big scary thing. Coal Shack, that show. We had those type of shows, but she would let us not officially be awake and sitting in the room watching, but she knew we were on the stairwell watching, and she just let it happen. So, that's where mine came. And I also marvel that, what you grew up with being called a latchkey kid, I grew up with, that's just the way life was. We got up in the morning, we watched our cartoons, had some cereal, jumped our bikes, and we didn't come back until the street lights came on.
Yeah. I mean,
parents didn't worry,
No, I got up and got myself ready for school and, caught the bus on time and, came home and I had the key into the house in my sock, so I could take out my shoe, and get it.
Yeah.
A lot of times, there was a few times I'd come home and I'd dump the key out and it'd broken in half because of the heat from my foot or something would soften the metal and then eventually just
right.
So I'd have to walk to the office, get a new key, so. Yeah, that's just the way it was. But I also lived near, like literally was, you walk maybe 60 feet, go up a hill, another 100 feet, and there's a cemetery. So I was always up there playing too at night or something, or in the woods or whatever. So yeah,
cemeteries are always the best place to hang out.
Yeah,
you can get away with a lot.
At night. Yeah, we'd play hide and go seek, and 1 a.m. and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So. And then I would used to get in. There was like a mausoleum that would be slightly open, and then I would like wiggle myself between the door and get in there, and then you could see all the graves on the wall and stuff. Then wiggle myself back out.
Well, see, now you're lucky because our cemetery. I grew up in a small town, so we didn't have a mausoleum. We didn't even have a groundskeeper shed, as far as I could see. But the cemetery was kind of in the woods, and that was our domain, and we played in the woods, so plenty of times running through. Well, okay, let's just go for the obvious question. And all the times that you're playing around in the cemetery late at night, do you ever see something that scared the hell out of you, or you couldn't explain, and you and your friends would talk about for the next week?
Well, there was. It'd be too long to tell the story, but yeah, there was an instance where it wasn't in the cemetery though; it was in the woods. And the reason we were at a cemetery, but somebody called the cops. Cops showed up with their dogs and stuff, and so me and my friend took off. And then we were in the woods, and we kept looking back, thinking, well, maybe they're coming after us with the dogs. And then we never seen them, but one time we were just sitting there, looking to see if we can see, movement. See this, like at a tree, I would see like a black figure run across to another tree, and then run back to another tree. And I'm like, what in the world? And he's like, what is it? I'm like, I don't know. And but it wasn't the cops, because they wouldn't be, they would have the dogs, you would hear them, all that stuff. They'd have flashlights, and so we just kept going, and then found our way to an electric fence. We had to, after we got shocked on how many times, we finally got over that. And it was a whole
holy shit. Now I'm trying to imagine where the cemetery is, because you had cops with canines, electric fences. I mean, thank God our cops were so fucking lazy. All they do is spotlight. You just had to lay down. They'd never see you.
Oh no, there was horses. And then there was a write-up in the local small little teeny paper, and it said something like the next few days later or something, like a little village paper, and it said it mentioned that little scenario, and because we actually went to the police station at one point and said, hey, blah blah blah. We kind of like, because there was more people than just us, but somebody else got busted, and so we went and said, hey, we were there. We didn't want, we felt bad. And so they're like, and they didn't even like bring us in there. And they go, oh, okay, like, sure, whatever. Like I don't think they even believed us, but we told them stuff. And then they, in the paper, it says sources tell the police, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, we told them that. That's the information we told them. Like, they're using our information in the paper. Yeah. We're the sources, but
yep.
Yeah.
I'm still marveling that you went to the police station to get your buddy. My friends and I, we just like, think you'll be at school tomorrow?
Yeah.
Just left about the dry.
No,
Doc, what kind of trouble did you get into?
To me, I was perfect.
Bullshit.
I actually was a pretty good kid. I was in the big city though, so that makes a difference. You know, you can only
Yeah.
you're either really bad, and you got to remember, I'm in the 50s. So you were either really bad or you were a good kid. And about the worst things I ever did was always had to do with things like I met the Beatles when they were on their first tour over here. You know, I was the bad girl who wore mini skirts and things like that because the cemeteries were miles away. You know, I think the worst thing I ever did in my life was I got so mad at my parents. Um, there was a huge field. It was probably 20 or 30 acres right behind our house and a number of the other houses. And I went and camped out there for like 2 months. But I went to school every day. I hiked, it was like 2 miles into school and 2 miles back. And the school kids, their parents would send food for me because they all knew what I was doing. And I just camped out there for a while until the weather got really bad. But I just didn't want to I didn't want to be in the house. But, you know, aside from that, I was actually a very good child until Woodstock.
Were you at Woodstock?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm older than you guys think. Yeah, I was at Woodstock. Yep.
Uh-huh.
I was.
Doing drugs and flashing boobies?
It rained. I can tell you how much it rained at Woodstock. But I did leave with all my own clothes. I can attest to that.
The milestone of that event.
Yeah,
Got home with all my original clothing.
No, I have relatives who had a farm up there, and we would hike across fields to get to Woodstock. But it was heaps faster than these guys that were parking like 5 miles away and hiking in, and
Yeah.
you know,
I saw documentaries that just traffic was insane.
it was insane. It was a heck of a show.
I can imagine.
No, that was how we were bad in my day. It wasn't until I got older that I got really bad and started doing things like going to mausoleums and cemeteries and looking for UFOs and, you know, looking for
the 50s.
Well, you know.
It was a criminal offense if you ate your ice cream counterclockwise. Sorry.
I mean, it was bobby socks and poodle skirts and sweaters. And yeah, I was part of that gen. So give me a break.
My gen was Led Zeppelin and weed.
That was later. That was
70s.
That was after I already had some degrees and was, yeah. But I still was, I remember Led Zeppelin really well. And I remember concerts back then because you could afford them.
Yeah. All right, Sheldon. When did you start writing? Because I noticed you've got a whole slew of published shorts. So when did you actually start your writing?
Third grade, I think.
Third grade?
Yeah. And I've always wrote for myself because I just wanted to write, and because being an only child, your best friend is your imagination.
Yeah.
Right.
And so since it's me and my mom, if I wanted a bigger family, then I could just write about it. If I wanted brothers, I wanted sisters, and I wanted a father, and all that stuff, I could just write about it. I can use my imagination, creativity, and create the things I wanted, by writing the stories.
Cool.
And so I would just write. And then, as of course you get in your teens, you start writing poetry, and then, of course you're wearing all black and you have long hair and you're listening to metal and all that stuff. And then your school counselor calls you in the office several times a year because they think,
something's wrong with that boy.
Yeah. And then, and then you just keep writing, but I just kept socking everything away. I mean, I still have all that stuff. And then, you just keep going along, and then it wasn't, since I didn't have somebody to go to really, I didn't know how to get my stuff out. Like I didn't know how to like, oh, where can I send this? You know, if I want it published. You know, I knew that magazines existed, but I didn't know anything about, you know, in the back you might find an address, you know, submissions, you know, whatever. You know, I didn't know that there was books, you know, at the store that you can go and it would have a list of agents or things of that nature. You know, I didn't have. Then I would give my story to teachers at school, and they would read and go, "Oh, pretty good," and that was it. You know, and meanwhile, I'm giving it to them because I thought they might be of some service. You know, with, you know, they might go, "Oh, you know, you should do this," and you know, and that would sort of get me on the right track, and that never happened. So
Right.
I just kept everything, you know, just put it in a box or whatever, and then. It wasn't until 2008 when I actually submitted to something that was in the year or two before that. I finally submitted stuff online, you know, and it was always like just free stuff. It wasn't, you didn't get paid for it or nothing. It was for, you know, for people to see your work or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
And then in 2008, I submitted a piece, and it came back like an hour later. They accepted it. And that was paid. And then I sent another one the same day, and then a couple hours later that came back accepted, and that was paid. And so I said, oh, okay. So I just kind of kept going. So from 2008, you know, hasn't even been 20 years now. So, you know, that's when I've always wrote, but it wasn't until then when I started submitting seriously, you know, for pay and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so now people come to me and go, "Hey, would you want to write a story for this?" And so now I'm lucky enough to it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens. So it's nice when that does.
Yeah, exactly. You're not out, you know, knocking on doors all the time.
Yeah,
Sometimes they're knocking on yours.
Yeah. And even then, like I used to just, in the early days, I just was, you know, I didn't really, now I wish I would have did it backwards, but not because I didn't know any better. You know, I looked at it as, okay, I'm going to concentrate on short stories because it's sort of like the training wheels on a bike before I take them off and write a novel, you know. And, you know, I wish I would have just started writing novels, crappy novels, and gotten really good at that, and then did short stories throughout. Instead, I just concentrated on short stories and flash fiction, and you know, started doing screenplays and all that stuff. And then I would, you know, started getting into novels eventually, you know. But, you know, it is what it is. But that's the way I looked at it, because I didn't know, you know, if I had that mentor at that time or a teacher or somebody to tell me otherwise, I would have did it the other way. But I just thought, okay, you know, I'll do it this way, and then I'll get really good at that. Because, you know, when you're writing a short story, you only have so many words to use. So you have to be precise and all that stuff. So
Right.
you have to be tight. So I thought, okay, then I'll be able to, the novel, you know, if I do a novel, I'll have more room to play with, but I can also try to be tight in my chapters because they're short stories, basically.
And how's that working out?
Yeah, well, it's me for, you know, I get novels. I can just go off, you know, on a tangent and write, you know, 20 or 30 pages and go, that was too much, you know. Then I have to go back and edit the whole thing down.
Okay. Well, I myself like the short stories mainly as a reader. It gives me a taste of writing styles for, you know, a lot of people at once, basically. I mean, if you just pick up a book of short stories, you got anywhere from 5 to 8 different authors. You may not like every story, but then you'll see an author and it's like, okay. And then you see another story, and then you see that he's got a series of books out. So I kind of like that myself. Also, I was thinking, you know, if you had done this in the reverse, maybe you wouldn't have reached the success that you've hit today.
Well, and that's true. That's the other thing. You don't know. I mean, the way I see it, your path is your path. I mean, no matter what you think, you can't control what's already happened and what's going to happen. You only control what you can control now. So
yeah,
it's the way it's happened. That's the way it's happened. I'm okay with it. You know, I'm working on the next novel, and then I'll work on book 2 of the Erie Brothers after that, and keep going. You know,
outstanding. Jen Folk just popped in. She has some questions for you. So she wonders if you have an agent. Do you think they're necessary, and how do you get one? How did you get one if you have to?
Currently, not currently. I've never had an agent. That is my goal. And to me, whether they're necessary really depends on what you want to do as a writer. I mean, if for me, and this is just my way, it doesn't make it the right way. But I know if I can get an agent and if say they could sell the book, you know, they sell it to a big four publisher and all that. Now the book is going to get a lot further out into the world and a lot in front of a lot of eyes and readers than I ever could. I can only do so much. Like for this book, I did as much as I could for this book. You know, there's a small publisher. You know, they paid me in advance and all that stuff. But I'm the one who, you know, I was interviewed by 2 newspapers in Ohio. I was on the cover of their Sunday edition. I was interviewed on radio stations in Ohio. You know, I've done all this stuff. I would say, and I even had the book sent through a press release around the world to over 200 news stations, and it showed up in Africa and showed up in South America and all this stuff. You know, and I've had on Twitter where, you know, over 60,000 people saw the cover. I mean, I've got on my own, you know, just doing the stuff that okay, what can I do? I've probably gotten the book in front of 100,000 people, maybe more, I bet, you know, just from, because the radio stations covered 4 or 5 counties in Ohio each. How many people live in those counties? The newspapers reached 4 or 5 counties. You know what I mean? So if you add up all those people, possible eyes, I'm not saying they all looked at it, all heard the radio interview, ability of a lot of people. You know, so that's, so with a small press or self-publishing, you know, you only could do so much. But if I had I had an agent and the book sold, then the book's gonna end up in California. It's gonna end up in every state, probably. You know, it's gonna end up, you know, and so it's gonna show up in the front of a lot of readers, a lot of eyes, more than I could ever do. And that's, for me, that's important, because that, you know, whatever percentage comes out of that for book sales and people who read the book, you know, that's a good thing, you know. So that's one reason why I want an agent, because I know that they can get it out there to a wider audience. Also, they can, you know, for instance, I've had a friend who wrote a book. He couldn't get it with, his agent couldn't get it with a publisher at that time, a big 4 publisher. And so the agent said, well, let's have the film agent, because now a lot of agencies have film agencies connected to them. Let's have them see what they can do. They ended up selling the idea for the book to CBS for a television show. And then because that happened, he had a bidding war over his novel from publishers in New York City. And then he got the deal for the book. And went on and won some awards, and they wrote a sequel that won awards, and the TV show came on. I think it lasted for a year. But his agent said, well, let's go this way, you know, to get you the book, you know. So agents can do a lot of stuff for you, you know. And so for me, I think that they're a good partnership, a good relationship, and a good working relationship. So I don't see why, you know, for me, that's the angle I want to go. I can't remember what the last question of her question was, but
how do you get an agent if you need one?
The ones that I have pitched, even the Erie Brothers to, I mentioned that book earlier that you can get at the bookstore, and I don't know if I have it anywhere behind me, but it lists, like, the whole book's just nothing but agents, and then you go through your sort of genre, adult fiction, find your genre, and then I just went through every page and read every one and marked it, and then I sent it to every single one of them at various intervals, but not all at one shot. I've also met a few agents personally, you know, like I'd go somewhere where they were, and I would do a face-to-face pitch. At StokerCon, they have agents. You can go pitch there, which I'm hoping to do this year with the new book. So there's a lot of ways you can get an agent, a lot of ways you can go about it. So, and they're always on Twitter. I mean, you find agents on Twitter all the time talking about, hey, I just opened up for submissions, queries, you know, query me this at this email. So it's a lot easier nowadays to find them, for me at least, than it was before.
Okay. Jen popped up wanting to know what part of Ohio, and somebody else popped up saying, yeah, what part?
I grew up in Amherst, Ohio, which is in Lorain County, a couple of miles south of Lake Erie.
Okay.
And the interviews I did, one was in Sandusky and one was in Elyria, Ohio, the radio interviews. And the newspapers I did, one was in Elyria. It was a newspaper in Elyria that covered Lorain County and other counties. And the Sunday edition that I was on the cover of the Sunday edition was the Morning Journal, which covers Lorain and a whole bunch of other counties. So Toledo, yeah, I know Toledo fairly well.
Well, she's saying she's from Toledo. She's not saying that she was kicked out of Toledo. We all know Jen.
Yeah.
So when I was researching for the show, I came across the articles that you had in the newspaper, but I'm really interested. How was it going on the radio?
That was avoid at all costs. That was they were like, we can if you don't want to come in, because I live in Pittsburgh, they're like, you don't want to come in, we can do you we can just do it over the phone. I'm like, no, radio, I'm coming, I want to be in the studio.
Yeah, be
yeah,
in
so
studio.
it was cool. You go in like you would think, they have the microphone set up and they have, the DJs are across from you and, and they tell you, okay, we're going to come back. I'm going to play some spooky music and then I'm going to introduce you. And then, you just start talking to them live on air. Not realizing that there's over 100 or 200,000 people who could actually listen to you at one time. So, I wasn't nervous at all. I just talked to them and, if people want to listen to those, they can go to my website and I have all of those kind of links up so they can listen to the interviews and stuff.
Okay.
Oh, tell us the website.
SheldonHigdon.com.
Okay. Sounds great. So you weren't nervous. That's awesome. A lot of people get flustered. I would imagine going into a radio station, it would be similar to this. You're just sitting down talking, nothing hard.
No, that's all. Even for me, even for TV, if I was on a TV show, it wouldn't bother me just because I don't mind being in front of a lot of people. I know it's just, it just doesn't bother me. I just kind of think it's cool. Go, oh, wow, okay, I got 1 million people watching me. All right, this is gonna be fun, But then once they start talking to you, you're just lost in the conversation, anyways. You're not worried about
exactly,
people checking you out. So,
yeah, I've noticed you have no problem talking to us at all.
No.
I do have a question though about your book and the way you pitched it. Did you intentionally initially pitch it as an adult book? Or because you said adults buy it and then they share it with their kids afterwards, or did you initially, pitch it to like teens, or what was the initial market that you were aiming at?
No, it was middle grade all the way.
Okay.
But the reason I think a lot of older people, I guess you should say, or parents or whatever, are reading it is hopefully because of the premise, if they read it in the back, or the cover definitely pulls you into it. It's a really great cover.
Mm-hmm.
But I like those radio stations. I mentioned to them that I didn't want to write down to kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I didn't want to, kids are smart, and they can read up. And so I didn't want to write down to them and dumb it down. I wanted to write to them. So I wrote it as if I was just writing an adult novel anyways. The only thing I didn't do was have curse words and blood and sex and all that stuff because it's a middle grade book. So, right. And I think that's why the parents and adults are enjoying it, because it's not written in a way where it's a kid's book. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the cover a little bit. When I saw the cover, and please don't take offense because it's a good thing, and I think it might even go into what you just said. First thing that hit my brain was goosebumps. And that's something that people even of my age, you're younger, obviously, we all remember Goosebumps. Everybody loved it. I don't know anybody who didn't like that. So I saw that cover, and that's the first thing that grabbed my attention. That made me look at your back blurb. Who did your cover work for you?
Florian Garbe. He lives in France. He's Parisian. And I'd never met him. We, talked, the publisher who's one who got him to do the work.
Okay.
And then he would have questions, so they came back to me, hey, he wants to know if there's 3 sort of moments in the book that you think would be a great cover, And I said, oh, okay. So I wrote down 3, what I thought would be cool as a cover. And then that's the one he went with because there's a scene in the book where there's scarecrows chasing the boys, but they're on the back. They're in a cart, on, being pulled by horses, because at that point they're in 1692 Salem, and scarecrows are running, coming down the the dirt road behind them after them, And so I said, yeah, there's this scene, and so he took it, and that's what his vision was that. Because I didn't want to tell him this is how I want it done. Here's the part, you take it and do what you think is cool and all that stuff. And I'm and earlier in the email I mentioned there's the bad guy's house. I described that, and he has that in the background on the cover. And then I said the only thing I said make sure they're wearing current clothes. I said because when they go back in time, their clothes automatically show up as the garments that they would wear back then.
Yeah.
I said, but on the cover, make sure they're wearing like today's clothes, because that way people don't get I don't want people to think that the whole book took place in that time period, So
right.
It shows you that they're, sort of wearing tennis shoes and all that, but they apparently are in maybe at a different time. You know what I mean? So he came up with that and the color concept, and then he did an awesome job.
Yeah, it's really good. And I like the color schemes that he used. And I'm kind of amazed it was kind of a one and done. I've talked to other authors. They're like, well, we went through 6 different versions before we finally got to this. And so
they sent like sort of a mock-up. I don't want to say a mock-up, but sort of like a really rough version of it, and I said, okay, just to show me that the perspective of it and all that stuff. And I said, well, no, that's cool. And then I didn't know the color scheme or anything, he just said, yeah, that works. And then they came back with that, and I was like, oh, okay. So I'm hoping when I do book 2, 3, and 4, that he'll continue to do the covers, because that way it'll stay, consistent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's a good look. So why not? Well, hats off to that artist. He nailed it.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah.
So
I guess that's the good thing about having a publisher, is that they handle things like connecting you with the artists and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to go through that long list of people just to find somebody. Is your book available on Audible?
It's going to, but it's not ready now.
Okay.
I think they have somebody in mind to do the reading, but I'm not sure who it is yet.
Okay. That's another question we like to ask, because it's hard to find a good narrator. If they're new at it, doesn't mean they're bad, but they always tend to do the same Shatner type pauses during the reading. Yeah. And for me, it's very distracting. But you get the established guys like Eric Shellman and Matthew Crow and, people like that. And boy, it's spot on.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know anything further than I know it's in the works. I just don't know when it's going to come out or happen and stuff.
All right. Well, if we don't mind, let's talk a little bit about your shorts. Okay. That sounds wrong. So sorry.
Yeah. I was going to say
short stories.
Is it even warm enough to be wearing shorts in Ohio right now?
For all we know, he's not even wearing pants. So,
this is.
I don't want to know. No.
I got pants on.
Okay. I was going to say I'm a straight guy in this show, so no, I'm not Jen.
Speaking of which,
yeah, we like short shorts. Yeah, Jen.
I wear short shorts. Remember the old commercial?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I remember the commercial.
I have short shorts.
Yes.
That's all my shorts are short shorts. And they actually look good on me. So there you go, guys.
You'll
have to take my word for
shorts it. Shorts and swimming. So.
Your short stories, how horror based are they? Are they similar to the book that you put out, or do you just go kind of crazy?
No, well, those are all adult oriented, so those are far more,
graphic,
scarier, I guess. Yeah, I don't rely on blood and gore too much. I use it when I feel it's necessary. But they are, a lot of that stuff's more suspense related horror,
okay.
Dread and just terror and things like that. It's funny because like whenever I write short stories, I just sit down and go, okay, I'm going to write a short story, and I write it. And it's usually over a weekend. I write it Saturday and edit it Sunday, and then it's done.
Wow.
But I don't think about them too much. I don't outline them or anything. I just know I have an idea, and then that's what I go with. And anymore, like I haven't written one for a while now. Probably over a year, I guess. But
Mhm.
what I'll do is I'll write short story, a whole bunch, and then I'll keep them. And then when I know I see something, like, hey, anthology is looking for this type of story, I'm going, oh, I got one. Because I
Yeah.
already wrote 5 or 6 short stories and they're just sitting there, and then when the right opportunity pops up, I submit it, and that's how my last 2 or 3 short stories got published, is I already had them written, and just, the anthologies came up at the right time, and they were the right anthologies.
Okay.
Okay. How
Instead
about the
of looking for stuff and then going, "Ooh, I'm going to write something for that." That way I can be more free with what I write. I'm not like up against the wall because here's this one. I got to write this for this, and I'm sort of, my back's against the wall, and that way I can just write what I want to write and then just be relaxed about it. And then when something pops up for it, it pops up.
Okay.
Okay, so on the short stories, pacing, that's an issue for me when I'm doing a short. I always feel like it's too rushed. Like you said, you only got so many words you can do. How have you overcome that pacing issue, or isn't an issue for you?
No, actually, what I'll do is, for instance, if I saw um, something online where they're looking for short stories and they go, anywhere between 3 to, or 2 to 6,000 words. I usually will go right in the middle, about 3,000 words. Because usually, for the most part, magazines and all that, 2,500 words, 3,000 is usually like a really good spot of word count for them. And so I'll usually go for that. I don't, if the story is much more intertwined, I have a lot going on in it, then it will be I've written 10,000 word stories. Then I'll do that, but I always stick to around 3,000 words, and I just sort of, the pacing just, it's something I don't have an issue with. It sort of just comes, I don't want to say naturally, but naturally. I mean, it just sort of comes as the story comes out, and then I'll go back, and when I do edit, and if I feel like something needs to sort of maybe hang on a little longer, or maybe, be a little sort of Tommy gun action where I just need it to kind of, then I'll do that there. But for the most part, it's never something that I have to really work on too much.
Okay,
Yeah.
lucky you.
The last story that came out last year, I think it was, that one got a lot of attention because of the ending, which I can't tell you how the ending is, but a lot of people brought up the ending, how it was just someone said that ending hurt too much. I went, "Ooh, that's a good thing."
That
And
sounds like a
someone,
good thing.
yeah, and someone said, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's," they compared it to a Richard Matheson-esque kind of ending.
Okay.
And so that one got a lot of attention. So that one, I just wrote it. I just sat down one day and just said, "I'm going to write a story," and that's what I wrote. And I don't try to force things, I guess, because if you just let it naturally happens, then it'll be more honest. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Makes
You know what I mean?
sense. I think I just need to write more shorts to kind of get it.
Have you ever written anything? What's the smallest amount you've ever written in a short story, like word count?
I think the shortest one I've written was the one that got published. I think it was a little more than 7,000 words.
Okay.
But
So
every time I've gone back to reread it, I'm just like, God, even I feel rushed.
you've
You
never
know,
written anything like 1,000 word story or even 100 words?
definitely have never tried to write anything 100 words.
You should try that.
That would be a good exercise, I think.
Yeah, it would.
I mean, how do you put a story into 100 words? That you really got to be
Well,
precise.
Yeah, I read this morning. There you go.
yeah, in that instance, you're literally taking the smallest moment possible and turning it into something terrible. I mean, I've had one published, and a 100-word story is called a drabble.
Okay.
And I've had one published, and it was basically a wife and a husband eating steak tartare, and it's raw,
Uh-huh.
and it's and it's raining outside, it's hitting the glass, and he's the guy's thinking, holding his wife's hand, thinking, that the raindrops hitting the window reminds him of his ex-wife, and so does the tartare.
Okay.
So they're eating his ex-wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was like,
So,
that's becoming
yeah.
sort of obvious. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was just a 100 words, and
Nice. I would like to hear a little bit about an article I have not read, but it is in a magazine that I read, Rue Morgue. You told me you had written an article for them about Night of Living Dead, I believe.
Yeah. I actually had the magazine. I'll just hold it up. This came out in 2012, January, February 2012. It's their issue number is 119. But it's not about the movie so much. It's at that time up at the cemetery where they shot the film. I actually took this picture too. But there's this wedding chapel that was in the movie. You see it in the background, and it was dilapidated after all these years. And so they wanted to fix it up and get money and all that stuff to fix it up. And so in order to get the word out, I talked to Rue Morgue, and and they said, oh yeah, write a 700-word article and blah blah blah, and then they printed it. It was Gary Striner, who's I can't remember if he did sound on the film. I can't remember. Sorry, Gary. But his brother is Russ Striner, who is the actor who played Johnny. I'm coming to get you, Barbara. That's his brother,
Right.
Russ Striner. And so at that time, and they got the money to fix it up, and it sits there today, all nice and pretty. And they have little teeny weddings in there, and they do other stuff.
Oh.
So yeah.
Well, see, that's really
And
cool.
no zombies, right?
No, not that I know of. No. I mean, maybe at night, there's zombies in there getting married.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
What?
Well, I've got to ask about the zombies,
Well, I would have done it if you hadn't.
I know, but
Well,
it was
you
my
live in
turn to say
Pittsburgh.
something.
You live in Pittsburgh. It's it's a zombie capital of the world, so you kind of have to.
It's the birth of it. I mean, there's a lot of infighting about where the zombie genre all started. And for me, it's Romero, Pittsburgh, and the subject.
Yeah, the flesh eating kind. Yeah, the old
Yeah.
voodoo. All that other. Yeah, that.
Yeah,
So,
if you're
Well, you
looking
have
at
that.
voodoo, then you're in New Orleans, and that's
a whole different thing.
that's a whole different thing.
It's a different
Yeah.
thing. But I mean, people will argue for Lucio Fulci's Zombie. He had a series of the different ones. And I love those. Don't get me wrong. Italian splatter is awesome. You have some credits as a screenwriter, and we talked about it prior to the show. So you actually got an award at a film festival. Can you tell us about that particular script that you wrote?
It was the Erie Horror Film Festival up in Erie, PA. And the script that I wrote, which almost became a film, was called Conundrum, and it took place at an old folks' home, and a person who comes there because his grandmother got injured. He comes there and he meets an old man who turns out to be death, and stuff like that. So and so it was nominated for best short screenplay because it's only a half an hour long. And so I was like, do I go up there? Because it's like a 3-hour drive, I think, about straight shot from Pittsburgh up to Erie. And I'm like, and my daughter was only 9 months old at the time, and my wife's like, we should go. And it was getting darker and darker, and I knew, like, if I don't leave, we're gonna miss the award part.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, let's go. So we just got in the car, and I sped and got there like in 2 hours. And then I literally walked into the place. We walked into where they're in the theater where they're having the award show, and they just started best short screenplay. And I'm in the back, looking for seats, and they're like, and so we just stood there, and then they called my name. So, and I walked down, get on stage. They gave me a microphone and all that stuff. So yeah, then I won.
Well, that's quite a feather in the cap right there.
Yeah,
Well,
it was
perfect timing.
exciting. Yeah, it was exciting. And then now I have a short screenplay. This one's super short, and it's written just for the festival circuit. That was the whole point of it, for a director in London, which I think they're going to start shooting. I want to say May, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
So it's a 10-minute film, called the Giving Box. That's all I can say, really.
Okay.
But it will be filmed and then it'll be sent to throughout America and for fests and film festivals, and as well as the UK and stuff like that. And so the girl who the director, she her last film she made, she had like some people from the Transformer movies that were in it and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I'm kind of curious of who's going to pop up in this one, but we'll see.
Okay.
Should be exciting.
Yeah.
Well, then you're going to get a screen credit too. You're kind of an all-around author right now. You've got all kinds of great things going on.
I don't want to just stick to one thing. I want to, have my name, not my name, but my hands in all the cookie jars, if you will.
Right.
Because I've written comic book scripts that have never been. One came close with Dark Horse, but Marvel destroyed that for me. Sorry, Marvel. But so yeah, I have comic scripts that I wrote. I have screenplays that I wrote. I have novels, short stories, poems, nonfiction articles. So I try to write. I've even written some teleplays that that I was going to send out to production companies, but then the show was canceled, and so I never sent it. So yeah, I try to do as much as I can, and I have a full-length treatment for a full-length screenplay that I'm going to write with a producer in California. We're supposed to have a meeting sometime here, a Zoom meeting, so I can start writing the full-length script for that, and then see where that goes. So, and this person was actually nominated for an Oscar award 3 years ago. So,
wow, exciting stuff.
Yeah, so we'll see. He's currently working on other movies and stuff right now. So, once he has time, then we can do a video call. So, but yeah, so I'm trying to keep my hands in all the cookie jars, and that's why another reason why I want an agent, because if things pop up, things go through. I want to make sure I have somebody on my side who knows the contracts, who can understand the lingo, that kind of stuff. So
I would think that you've reached that level where an agent is a necessary thing right now.
Yeah, that's for my.
Well,
that's
actually not just a good. I'm gonna say not just a good agent, an attorney.
Yeah.
So if you have questions, send me a copy of it.
Okay.
Because I'm an attorney.
All right.
Multiple times. Oh yeah. for many decades, longer than you've ever been alive. I can trust me.
God.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've had to use a buddy of mine who's a writer, he's also a lawyer, who I've usually send him stuff when I don't understand something.
Just make sure they really read it, because I can tell you horror stories. I can tell you funny horror stories of people who've signed contracts and gotten caught later on with like, no, dude, you're stuck. I'm sorry, I can't figure out a way to break it. You should have brought it to me beforehand, and I could have put a clause in there.
Yeah, I've had contracts offered to me where I've read them and I went, oh wait, if I do this, that means everything I write they get.
You got it.
I can't go elsewhere. And so,
or you can't write certain genres, or I could tell you great stories of a mate of mine out in couple of mates out in California who are backers that got nailed, including one that's an attorney and didn't really read the contract, didn't really think of the implications. And
Well, with the movie, the director, she has her own production company she created, and she sent me a contract that says read it, and if you don't like anything, let me know. Okay. And so I said, okay, I don't like this, change it to this. She's like, okay, whatever you want. I want to make sure you are happy because this is your work.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, and then I did have a screenwriter of 30 plus years out in LA read the contract too, just so as a sort of precaution.
That's a
He's like,
backup,
no, he
yeah.
goes,
Yeah.
he
The more eyes, the better.
yeah. He's like, she's working, she's like, you're really trying to do good for you. So everything's great, so, and
That's
so,
what you need, because
Yeah.
trust me, a lot of these, they've pulled a contract, a template, and here it is, sign it, and people don't really read what's in it, and until you wind up getting screwed. And
Well,
it's not even intentional. It's just, this is what they've always used, and they don't think about the implications of what's in it. Nobody really pays any attention to what could happen.
yeah. And I think sometimes I think about that. Like, I can only imagine if I was 20 years old, and somebody gave me a contract, I would have just probably signed it, not knowing any different, not understanding the language, but since, I was older, at the time 2008 rolled around when I was signing contracts, then, I could understand, but also I knew people within the industry who I knew I could send it to and go, hey, can you read this for me? And they would, oh yeah, sure. So I had that too, as well.
Yeah.
So like I said, sometimes your journey is just the way your journey goes, and you just take the ride.
Yeah. Outstanding. Well, we're down to the last couple minutes of the show. So Sheldon, take some time, tell everybody where they can find you, find your work,
Well,
sell yourself now.
The best way is just my website, sheldonhigdon.com. That has all my social media links there, so people can find me on Facebook and Threads and X and TikTok. Of course, you can go to Amazon. Has a link from that too. Go to Amazon. Has a lot of publications there. The Erie Brothers. You can go to if you don't want to go to Amazon, you can go to Barnes and Noble. You can go to Joseph Best Booksellers website. You can go to Books a Million. Dark Delicacies out in California has one signed copy left. All the rest they've sold. So there's one sitting out there if somebody wants to sign one. Powell Books, everybody, places in Australia and UK have it. So yeah, you can either search it or just go through my website and you can find stuff.
Okay. And you're also on Facebook, so that would be a good place to interact with you, I would think.
Yeah, that's where I do most of my stuff. My, interacting with people. Like for me, like X, it's just like I interact with people, but it's just not the same as like Facebook. It's just Facebook for me is just much easier. To talk to people and stuff. Unlike TikTok is pretty good for me. I get some interaction there. So
okay,
or Instagram, things like that. But
outstanding, Doc. You got any more questions?
No, this was great. I mean, Sheldon was wonderful to interview, I gotta say.
Absolutely.
I didn't have to think a whole heap.
I found this show really, really informative. I thank you so much for being with us, Sheldon. I would hope that you'd be willing to come back at some point. Maybe if you have a book release coming up, reach out, let us know. We'll do a release show with you. But you've been a great guest, and I really thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, that's going to end the show for today. Sheldon Higdon is our guest, and he's an amazing individual. And I think I'm going to pick up your book and read it. I love the cover, and I love the blurb on back, so I think it's going to be well worth it.
Well, I hope you enjoy it.
Okay. All right. That's it for today's show. We're out.
All right.
Yep.